Welcome to the F1 Debate Show. We discuss Robert Kubica testing for Renault Sport in Valencia.
We talk about Portugal possibly returning to the F1 calendar.
Robert Kubica, the first Polish Formula 1 driver who made his first appearance in the 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix for 4 years, is testing at the moment for Renault F1. The 32-year-old Polish driver, who had limited movement in his right arm following his rallycross crash in February of 2011, is testing in the 2012 car of the Lotus Renault team in Valencia circuit, and he tested on Tuesday. He said that he was proud of what he achieved and he was back doing what he loved. Robert Kubica setting over 100 laps in the 2012 V8 Lotus Renault car. He drove for Renault and BMW Sauber in his 4-year career in Formula 1. As I say, he started in 2006 Hungarian Grand Prix and his last entry was his 2010 Abu Dhabi Grand Prix. He took victory in 2008 at the Canadian Grand Prix, which obviously, as you all know, is the race tomorrow, and he had a massive crash in 2007 at the Canadian Grand Prix, the year before that, absolutely massive, coming down into the hairpin of Sector 3. He was a great person in Formula 1, someone that we all love to watch, and as I always said, he was the first Polish Formula 1 driver, the only Polish Formula 1 driver, so obviously it was great to see him. Yeah, so he's come out of rallycross and has been testing in the Renault car because he is thinking about a F1 return, and he's just been saying a few days ago in the papers and things, even before he got into the car, that the Formula 1 return would be absolutely fantastic. He would love to do that. It's definitely on the cards for him. He's only 32 years old, so he still has a big career in motorsport ahead of him. He did very well with Sauber and BMW again, scoring 273 career points in 67 starts. It might not have been the most successful, but it was very good in his eyes. Really great, and obviously someone that we all looked up to in those days. So it's great that Robert Kubica is back testing the car, but we're going to make our own kind of debate about it. Now, obviously, if you checked out the GP preview show, which came out on Thursday, we talked about Julian Palmer, okay? We talked about him, obviously, not scoring any points so far. We talked about him crashing in, obviously, many of the rounds, including Australia, and obviously in Monaco. Obviously, it wasn't great from him. He's really letting himself down this season. We talked about why is he in Formula 1? Should he stay in Formula 1? Is it good or is it bad? Anyway, so the topic that we're going to bring on today, okay, is the situation of, will Robert Kubica replace Julian Palmer either at the end of the season or more favourably during the season? Now, to start off with, we don't think that Julian Palmer should be out of Formula 1. We don't think that he's a bad driver. We're going to be discussing whether or not it would be better to take him out and replace him with Robert Kubica, who may promise to be a better Formula 1 driver. Obviously, the first point to bring in is that he was in Formula 1 before, obviously, he was in Formula 1, as I said, in 2006 to 2010, so he definitely knows what he's doing. He won in 2008, that was his first and only win in Formula 1, but he's got all that experience behind him, which obviously is really great, which Julian Palmer just seems to be lacking at the moment. A pointless season and a few DNFs aren't really great for him, and is that really what Renault need? As we discussed in the GP preview show as well, we talked about Nico Hulkenberg, his teammate, obviously transferring over to Renault from Force India with all that pressure that he came with. He spent all that money thinking that it was going to be the glory days of Renault, and again with Julian Palmer as a teammate, he isn't really showing that, Renault are definitely moving forward. So obviously we're kind of working out if Robert Kubica should be in Formula 1 instead of Julian Palmer. Now, in terms of Renault test drivers, the test driver that they have at the moment is Sergey Sirotkin, obviously the very skilled Formula 2 driver from Russia, very good, very skilled, and basically as a test driver does, for example, Pierre Gasly at Toro Rosso, he is expected to be taking the seat. He is supposed to be third in command. We've seen other test drivers like Pedro Della Rosa step in for teams like Ferrari, when they're testing in those kind of roles, and it also opens the opportunity to step in next season into Formula 1. So if Julian Palmer is on his way out, Sergey Sirotkin should be expected to fill his seat and be moving up. But with Robert Kubica there, and obviously a very good friend with Renault and testing now, it definitely shows that both Renault and Robert, and obviously all of his backings from Poland and people who have gotten him in, who had him in the car in 2006 and have now got him back into the car for testing, definitely want him to see him in Formula 1. Now, if he's going to be in Formula 1 for the years to come, that's a different topic. It's more about, is he going to be in Formula 1 to replace Julian for this season? Now, in my personal opinion, I think that Julian Palmer is a great driver. He's a fantastic guy to have in Formula 1. Another father-son pairing, we've had a lot of that in the past. We've had the Magnusens, we've had the Verstappens, we've had loads of people, loads of father-son pairings. We've had obviously in the past with world champions, we had the Hills, and obviously last year we had the Rosbergs. So obviously it's kind of a big it's a trend that's building in Formula 1 to have like a father-son pairing who have been in Formula 1. So obviously that's really great. But he was a very skilled driver in his time, Robert Kubica, and I know that he had a lot of fans around the world. So it's definitely a massive thing to discuss. I mean, do we think Julian deserves to be in Formula 1? Do we think that he's going to achieve more in Formula 1? And what's his kind of, what can we compare Julian to Robert to? Now, I think that Julian is a good driver, as I've just said, and I think if anything was going to happen, it would be over the summer break, where Renault would then just decide, is Julian still worth being in Formula 1, or should we replace him with Robert Kubica? Now, another thing that I was thinking, if they were going to do this, wouldn't they think about replacing Julian with Sergey Sirotkin, as I said, the test driver for Renault? Now, I know that Jordan, that he's very much behind Sergey Sirotkin, and obviously when we did our Formula 2 predictions, and obviously predictions for this season as well, last year, he put Sergey Sirotkin very, very high. I think he had him driving for Renault, or something like that, very high as a Formula 2 driver, as obviously like Pierre Gasly and people like that, who we will put very, very high up on that standings. So it'll be very interesting to see, does he think that it will be Sergey Sirotkin? Do you think he will be ahead in the line of Robert Kubica? But in terms of this testing, is he looking like he's going to be either there at the end of the season or to replace Julian midway through the season? Either if he doesn't perform, or if Renault just decide that he hasn't performed at the moment, because obviously as we know from other sources that Julian Palmer, just his seat is a bit on jeopardy. You know, what is going to be happening? Is he out or is he in? Are we going to see a trading places like we did with Daniel and Max, or what is going to happen? Anyway, so I'm going to pass over to him at the moment and get his opinion. Obviously, so Julian Palmer, as we discussed in the GP preview show, good driver. But with all the other things that are going on with Robert Kubica, and as I said, Sergey Sirotkin as a test driver, who his name hasn't really made an appearance in all of obviously the other media sources. Yeah. What do you think in terms of Julian's future? And then what do you also think about Robert Kubica? What do you think he's going to be doing with Renault? Do you think he's going to be a part of them? Do you think he's going to be driving for them next season? Or do you think do you think he could step in this season? What do you think about the Polish driver?
Well, first of all, I would like to say, it is good to see Robert Kubica back in a Formula 1 car, because we never thought we would actually see it ever again, judging by the state of his accident and his own condition after that rally crash. I remember it happening as well. I was honestly gutted as well, because I was quite a big fan of, I wasn't really a big fan, but I was aware of Robert Kubica. I think that was when we were just getting into Formula 1, we'd just been to, the British Grand Prix 2011, we were just sort of building into Formula 1 at this stage. But we knew who he was, so obviously it is fantastic to see. But just sort of carrying on from the GP previous show, talking about Julian Palmer, he's definitely under a lot of pressure right now, because as we were saying, we were comparing him to Lance Stroll. If you haven't seen the episode already, if you haven't already, I'll probably recommend to go and check it out before you hear what we have to talk about. And we were comparing him to Lance Stroll, who obviously it's his home Grand Prix race weekend this weekend. And we were saying that Julian Palmer, there's probably a lot more pressure on Julian Palmer than there is on Lance Stroll, because Lance Stroll's only been in Formula 1 for 6 races. And he's got time to sort of sort of get used to Formula 1. Whereas like Julian Palmer, he's already been in Formula 1 for a year, scored 1 point this season, yet he hasn't got off to the best of starts. So it's something that, well, not only Julian Palmer, but Renault should be considering as well. It should be like, okay, what do we do here? Do we keep Palmer till the rest of the season, or maybe possibly next season? Do we bring in Robert Kubica? Is Robert Kubica ready? See, that's a big debate. That's sort of like a big debate as well, because people are saying, is he ready or not? Nobody knows. Only Robert Kubica knows if he's ready to actually fulfill and he's fit enough to do a full Formula 1 season, which would be incredible, I would say. So yes, Julian Palmer should have that in the back of his mind, thinking, okay, I could be a bit under pressure here from Robert Kubica, and also Sergey Sirotkin, because a seat in Formula 1 now is high demand with like 10 teams now, so 20 drivers. That isn't a lot if you have a look at like the lower ranks, and people like Lance Stroll and other drivers who bought the way into Formula 1, sort of shoving the guys who have tried all their life to sort of get into that seat as well. So Sergey Sirotkin should be given his chance. I don't know when, because I think is he 18, 19 years old? I'm not too sure how old he is. I know he's very young. He might be 20 years old. I'm not too sure. But Renault should they sit down, probably about September, October time before the end of the season and go, okay, right, Julian Palmer has underperformed this season yet again. He's under expectations. Look at Nico Hulkenberg. He's outperforming. He's where he should be, possibly even exceeding team's objectives. Julian Palmer is underachieving. So we've got a young driver in the ranks who possibly may or may not have a big impact in Formula One. But obviously you've got to think about the money first. But we're going to discuss about the driving because that's what we like more than money. To be honest with you, so they should really think, okay, Sergey Sirotkin, highly rated driver. But look what happened to Lance Stroll. He's underperformed this season as well. There's all them things to think about. Or they could say, let's bring in Robert Kubica for one season, just to say, okay, he's back in Formula One. Might even keep him if he does a very good job. But let's just give him a 1 year contract, possibly if he is ready, and then maybe put Sirotkin in another seat, or maybe even place Nick Hulkenberg, sometime in the future. We're not really too sure. I don't think they'll replace Julian Palmer, in my opinion. Or even with Robert Kubica, I don't think. If they do replace Palmer, it will be probably with Sirotkin over Robert Kubica, I'm afraid to say. However, because I don't think Robert Kubica is ready. But 150 laps is actually very impressive from a guy who hasn't driven in Formula 1 car for over 6-7 years now. And it was at the same circuit where he tested his last, where he drove his F1 car last, when he was testing with Lotus Renault at the time. Just literally 2 or 3 days before he had his nasty accident. So it is good to see. It is, from what I've learned, I've learned what I've sort of lost out whilst driving Formula 1 cars and stuff like that. You would have lost a lot. Probably well, he never really got a chance to drive the 2012 car, did he? So driving one of them cars is like, oh, I could have been driving this, or the 2013 car, or even the V6 era. But for me, I would love to see Robert Kubica back into Formula One. It would be an incredible achievement to see. However, I don't think he will be replaced by Julian Palmer. He won't replace Julian Palmer this season. It might not be next season. It could be the season after. If there is any driver to replace Julian Palmer, it would be Sergey Sirotkin. If it were to be mid-season, I think that's my take on it. But obviously, as ever, let us know your opinions. Should Robert Kubica, drive a Formula 1 car again? Is he ready or is he not?
If so the thing is that we kind of discussed in the GT preview show as well about Nico Hulkenberg, about mass. Obviously, the thing is, he came to the team obviously with all of the money that he spent. It was 27 million euros that he spent in getting to the team, and obviously it was a massive thing. Yeah. It was a massive thing at that time. And obviously, he believed that they are he believes that they're the team that are going to get him the championship. It's a bit like when Fernando went to McLaren, but obviously, as we all know, that's that's even ridiculous. By the way, can I just say something, guys? Look what John's wearing. It's not McLaren.
It's not, no.
And do you want to tell them the reason for that?
Glory supporter. I'm a Glory supporter now. No, it's a nice little present I got.
Well, I think the fact is, obviously that we're done with McLaren.
Yeah.
McLaren can't even show the face. Anyway, so back to Nico Hulkenberg. So what I was going to say is obviously that Nico Hulkenberg came to Renault, thinking they're the big team that are going to get him the championship. They're going to get him wins because obviously he's been in Formula 1 for a very, 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 very long time. He did well, obviously, in Brazil all that time ago, in black and white, when he got pole position. But obviously, so he came to the team wanting success. So what do you think that he thinks about Julian Palmer at the moment? And what, because obviously we haven't really got any vibe that Nico wants, change, or he wants Julian out, or he wants just more change about Renault. But what do you think Nico Hulkenberg thinking about the team? Do you think he's happy with Julian's performance? And because obviously, as you said, not the great start, and he's not a rookie anymore. He's like a returner. He's they haven't got time to groom him again. As Hulkenberg will see it in his eyes, this is a team that should have 2 very experienced drivers in, and Hulkenberg's pulling his weight. But do you think he thinks that Julian isn't? What do you think he's thinking? Because in my mind, I think Nico Hulkenberg, he thinks that he probably thinks that Renault need to give him everything. They need to make it an amazing team that can get him champion, can get him at least wins. Because obviously he's never had a win, as I say, ever in his Formula 1 career. Never. He's won Le Mans, but he's never won a Formula 1 race, which is very, very, very. That's almost quite cringy to say.
Has he been on the podium before? I don't think he has.
No, maybe. No, he hasn't. That's the thing. No, he hasn't.
Is his highest finish?
Yes, he has. So we got pole position, as I mentioned, in Brazil in 2010. And, yeah, you're right. That's probably his only, good thing. Yeah, you're right. As John said, he's never been on the podium, never won. So basically, I think that he puts more pressure on Renault, and he really wants everything from them. And do you think he thinks that Julian Palmer isn't pulling his weight? And a bit like what we said about Lance Stroll, do you think what Felipe Massa thinks? Do you think Hulkenberg's like a bit frustrated about that? Do you think he's eventually going to come out in the next round or so if Julian doesn't pull his weight and say that he needs to be replaced by Sirotkin or Kubica? What do you think Hulkenberg thinking? Because I believe that's a massive thing for Renault. Also, like because he's like the number one driver at the moment, and they need to give him everything to get him where he wants to be, because I think the Hulk this time, I think this is the year that we're seeing Nico in a bit of a different light. We're seeing him going after, basically being very ferocious in the car and thinking like I want what I want, and what do you think Hulkenberg thinking about Palmer? Do you think he's happy, or do you think he's thinking that he's not pulling his weight?
Well, obviously Nico Hulkenberg wants to win championships. Wants to win. Well, first of all, he's got to finish on the podium first. But no, obviously, like every F1 driver, he wants to win races and he wants to win championships. Now, sorry, I was going to say Julian Palmer there. Nico Hulkenberg moved to Renault looking for victories and race wins and stuff like that, championships as well. And he probably sees the potential in Renault, because everyone is saying, okay, Renault are like the sleeping giant. They are going to wake up one day and it's going to be like, wow, Renault in pole position in Australia, 1-2, like 10 seconds away from like everyone else. Where do they come from? And I think that might happen one day. I think Renault will return one day and then probably leave again, and then come back 10 years later. I think that's what's going around, anyways. But I think because obviously Nico Hulkenberg. Well, actually, in a way, Nico Hulkenberg is pushing for time in terms of age. I think he's 30. I'm not really good with ages in this episode, guys. 31, I think Nico Hulkenberg is. Is he 30, 31? So
I don't know. Why are you asking me? Honestly,
I don't know. He's getting on a bit. So actually, I don't know. So he's getting on a bit. So Renault will be looking okay. Nico Hulkenberg's been in the car for quite a while now. Should we replace him? So Nico Hulkenberg wants to be, okay, I want you to give me a good car so I can perform at my max, so I can show you guys that we can move forward, so you can keep me in this seat.
Oh, you Max Verstappen. He wants a car so he can perform to his Max Verstappen.
Oh my. we did them jokes in the last episode. Oh,
jokes are free. Yeah, no, but you did badly, so it's my turn
now. I like
now.
that Stroll joke. I think that was. I might.
Yeah, but you can't like your own jokes. People have to like your own jokes.
Well,
do you like John's jokes? Comment below if you like that joke. I imagine you're not, but I don't know.
No one likes my jokes, so someone's got to like my jokes. So which is myself. I've got no friends, you see, guys.
I like your joke. Your jokes are okay. I'll put up with them.
The average.
If I have to.
They're like a McLaren 2016 season. Some are good, but
and that was average, was it?
Insult.
Well, it's better than this season, I mean.
I don't know where we're going with this. But yes, what we're talking about? Oh yes, Nick Hulkenberg.
Yeah.
So yes, so obviously Nick Hulkenberg can see the potential in Renault. So he's got to look at Jordan. But obviously, if Nick Hulkenberg is going to be the number one driver, I don't know if he is officially. I don't know how the number one status works. I don't know if it is the guy who brings in the most money, who performs better, or whoever's been there the longest. I'm not too sure. If it was, it would be Julian Palmer. But to be honest with you guys, I can't really see that. So obviously, Nick Hulkenberg will want to have a say as to who replaces him. So Renault will probably sit down with him in the season and go, okay, we're talking to Sirotkin and Robert Kubica. We could keep Julian Palmer, but we're not too sure. Who would you prefer to work with? And he'd probably go, I want to work with Robert Kubica, because he can learn a thing or two from Robert, because Robert was tipped for many great things when he was in Formula One, and he probably could have won more races than he did. He probably would have went with a higher team. It was a shame of what happened, unfortunately. But obviously, there's always time, to try and restart his F1 career. But so Nick Hulkenberg will want to sit, because if he's going to sign a multi-year contract, say another 2-3 year deal, and Renault have full faith in him, then obviously Nick Hulkenberg will want a teammate where he can say, okay, we are going to succeed with this driver. If you give us the right car, we will succeed for you. And so yes, and I believe Nick Hulkenberg is a bit frustrated, but at the same time he probably goes, well, the car isn't at its best. Yes, Palmer could be doing better, but it is Renault. It is unreliable at times. Nick Hulkenberg's found that out for himself already. So I think at the moment they have got two good drivers, but for me, Julian Palmer does need to get his act together, or it could be adios for Julian Palmer.
Or, as Nico Hulkenberg would say,
see you later.
That's what I was looking for.
Could Formula 1 be bringing back a classic Grand Prix? Because apparently this week the Portuguese Grand Prix is set to make an immense return to the Formula 1 calendar in the foreseeable future. Now, it's been a long time since the last Portuguese Grand Prix back in 1996, where Jacques Villeneuve famously took the victory on his way to a very unsuccessful season. However, the season following will be quite impressive. Now, it's been on the minds of the FOM for quite a while and the FIA for quite a while now, because the track that they are planning to host the Grand Prix at is called the Algarve circuit. Now, this circuit was built in about 2008, and it's hosted loads of other motorsport events. Quite a popular circuit, quite a big circuit as well. 15 corners as well, and a capacity crowd of over 100,000. So more than suitable to host a Formula 1 Grand Prix. So it'll be, I would say, very, very successful to actually go back to this circuit. Now, it has been hosted for testing before in Formula 1. GP2 has raced here, the motorbikes have raced here, Le Mans has raced there. So everything other than Formula 1 has raced here. Now, it has sprung up a bit of a debate. Now, this is only, obviously, a bit of a light news at the moment, because nothing has been officially confirmed. But obviously, with the new owners in, Liberty Media, Ross Brawn, Sean, whatever his last name is, and obviously Chase Carey, has been, obviously, speaking to a lot of track owners, whoever, to possibly bring back some Grand Prix. Now, the Turkish Grand Prix was one that actually sprung up recently, and talks have sort of died down about that, and now obviously the Portuguese is actually sprung from the ground, because they're planning to have a 21 race calendar, or about a 22, 23 race calendar by 2019. So obviously they're going to have to add some more Grand Prix into it, and the Portuguese Grand Prix is to be considered as one of them. Now, the Algarve circuit was actually approved to be F1 fit by Max Mosley back in 2009, and I believe they have had some negotiations with Bernie at the time. Obviously, when Bernie was in charge of that, but obviously talks have sort of died down when Bernie sort of said, right, I want more races abroad. That's why we're going to like sort of Abu Dhabi, India, and South Korea, places like that, where they didn't really succeed. But now, I was reading a few comments on the article where we're seeing this. I think like people like WTF1 and Autosport.com shared this and sort of like started the rumor ball rolling. So I was reading a few comments, and there was a lot of mixed emotions, because some people were saying, brilliant, let's bring this one back, and some people were saying, I don't want to go back to a Grand Prix where we've already been to. I want the F1 circus to go elsewhere. Now, this is kind of the question that we're going to be asking you guys. Should the Portuguese Grand Prix actually return? Now, it would be good to see on our behalf, because obviously the last Portuguese Grand Prix from 1984 till 1996, obviously long before our time, probably about a year or two before we were born. Actually, the same year I was born when the last Grand Prix was held, so a good 21 years ago now. So that'd be good to see. Obviously brand new circuit, Portuguese Grand Prix. I love it. I love a new Grand Prix. So to us, it is a new Grand Prix. But in Formula 1 terms, for the older generation, it's not. So that's kind of like arguing. That's like kind of like arguing over the fact of what's going to happen. Obviously, what's going to happen. So for me, I'm favouring this, because I'm like, let's go to Portugal. Let's see what Portugal has to offer. We haven't got any Portuguese drivers in Formula 1. We've had a few here and there, but obviously not. I don't think there's any in the lower ranks. So again, that would be a good way to promote Formula 1 there. But it's also good that Liberty Media are actually in talks with tracks like that, like Turkey and Portugal, to actually bring a lot more races back into Europe. Because Bernie was not a big fan of that recently. I don't know why. So probably actually money, to be honest with you. So I approve of the Portuguese Grand Prix. So it is good to see all these Grand Prix coming back into Europe. So happy about that. Lyle, now Portuguese Grand Prix to return possibly in 2019, because obviously they're having talks now to plan next year's calendar, and I don't think it's going to be on next year's calendar, because it is a bit too soon. However, 2019, the Portuguese Grand Prix, would you approve to see that return, or would you be like a bit like what probably about 50% of F1 fans are saying, and go, yeah, we want to go somewhere else, not the same place twice almost, really? What do you think?
Now, obviously, it's fantastic for Formula 1 just to go to other circuits and other places and other countries. It's great. That's one of the things I love about Formula 1, that we went to these kind of exotic places. I mean, I think when something like India, when I think the Indian Grand Prix came on the calendar, I think that was when you looked at the track and you were like, right, they've built they've built that lovely track, obviously spent all that money, making a great track. Obviously, it's in India as well, great fan base, and obviously where Force India are obviously originally from. Fantastic for that. I love going to different places. Yeah, right, we've been to Portugal before, obviously in the shape of Estoril. Estoril is an amazing circuit. I've mentioned it absolutely loads. It's one of my favourites It will always be one of my favourites. I'll tell you why it was because my favourites, because obviously the amazing driver of Ayrton Senna, that was probably one of his best wins and one of the best ones that I'll always remember. He drove.
It was actually, yes, I'm pleased you said that. It was actually his first.
Yeah.
That's where he took his first F1
Yep.
win.
In 1985 in Estoril, driving for the Lotus. Unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I mean, as Jordan said, yeah, it was his first win. He couldn't have just done it in a normal fashion. He had to do it in the wet. He had to lap everyone bar his teammate. Now that was like. It was crazy, absolutely crazy. Anyway, that was great from him, but obviously we're not really talking about Senna, we're talking about obviously Portugal. Estoril was a great circuit as well, obviously one of the old amazing circuits like Jerez and Brands Hatch and things like that. Going to a new circuit would be great. In terms of the European race, I mean, we're going to the Paul Ricard circuit next year, obviously in France, back to France.
Yes.
Great. Obviously, that's where the FIA, obviously their base is. Great batting in France. Obviously, we've had French drivers in the past, obviously in like Alain Prost and people like that. Obviously in the shape of Romain Grosjean this season as well. Probably have more. Obviously on the Legio Bianchi from France as well. So it's great to go to these countries. Formula One is very European. And in terms of who owns Formula One, I mean, yeah, we discussed that in another episode. We discussed that earlier on. I think we couldn't really put the finger on it because it isn't really anyone has the origin, but obviously it's fair to say that Formula One is European. It's obviously a lot of the calendars made around the European, obviously in terms of the times as well. Obviously, sorry America and sorry Australia. It is mainly kind of the times and stuff are mainly of like a revolve around Europe and things like that. We've been to a lot of countries in Europe as well. Obviously we keep going to loads even when they've had other add-ons. Obviously we've had tracks come back. As I say, we had obviously the Austrian Grand Prix coming back. We had the French Grand Prix which is coming back. We've been to numerous tracks in Germany. We've been to obviously tracks in Hungary and places like that.
We're going back to Germany in 2018 as well. I mean, after a year.
It's fun. Yep, absolutely great. Absolutely great. Things like the Nürburgring, by popular demand. I mean, they couldn't have the 10-mile circuit on there, but again, they tweaked that for that. So it's great to see them coming to Europe with all these unbelievable circuits. It would be good to see them go to Portugal. I'm in foot in both camps. So basically, the view that you could take, okay, so you've got people like that. I know it's never been on the Formula 1 calendar before, this new track, but it kind of looks like an older circuit, really. Obviously not as old as Estoril, but it looks quite good. So you've got like those old kind of circuits, and when you look at photos of it, it kind of looks like Estoril / Jerez, and it has got a bit of a look of like an older style circuit, which is quite good to see, John. I mean, just quickly, in terms of like the new circuits, for example, I mean, the newest circuits, obviously, we're looking at, I mean, I know Baku's a new circuit, but it's not really, let's put that one side. You have the tracks like Sochi and Abu Dhabi. I mean, Abu Dhabi, obviously, purpose-built circuit. That's probably like the pinnacle of the money and, manpower to make that circuit.
Stunning.
So, quickly, in terms of tracks coming back, would you prefer like an older style circuit like that, or the Abu Dhabi side?
I would like the Abu Dhabi side because just how glamorous it looks. But however, that isn't for if you there is two types of F1 fans. You've got the old school ones and obviously the modern generation ones, where obviously they want to see the tracks like Abu Dhabi, like Sochi, the glamorous, big money circuits which look absolutely incredible with brilliant facilities. Then you got the old school ones who like the classic, basic, good proper Grand Prix circuits, like your Silverstones, like your Spas. I actually watched a lap that back in 2009 that it was called was it A1 Grand Prix racing, I think it was
in Austria. Yeah,
it was
A1 ring. Yeah.
No. It was a racing series called A1 Grand Prix.
Oh right.
It was like a spin-off to F1, but obviously it was like Super Formula, really.
Yeah.
It was, I think it was the old version of that. And I watched the lap around the circuit, Algarve, and it looks basic. It doesn't look modern. It doesn't look too glamorous. It doesn't go, oh look at me. It just goes, I'm a Grand Prix circuit,
yeah,
and this is what I can do.
Yeah, and then that's what we want. Yeah.
And they were comparing it to like there's corners such as I think Spa was mentioned in there. Obviously not Eau Rouge, obviously, but like the corners there. There was another classic track that they were saying it's got parts of that in. So it's like all the good circuits as well. Obviously you've got good straights as well. It's got like a very long right hander before you go on the start finish straight. You got loads of dips as well. I want to say like do you know the corkscrew that they've got? Like they have it in Moto GP. I can't remember what track it is. I can't remember which one it is, but obviously it dips down. There's got some hill bits, but nothing like a corkscrew. That would be quite good to see in Formula 1. So FOM, if you're watching this, hint, wink, wink.
There's a track in
put one in Silverstone.
There's a track in California, John. And
That
has
might be it.
is that it? Is that it? Oh, there we go. There we go. Then
It might be it.
Yeah.
I keep thinking it's Spain. It's
it might
not.
be. So yeah, it's got a hard cert. It might be that one, but but you know what I mean. Anyway, yeah. Only so obviously we want that old style cert to be kind of in Formula One. It would be great to go there. It's also good that no tracks are really under the cosh at the moment, because I just remember like our first ever episode back this year, Jordan. We were talking about Silverstone maybe being dropped.
Yeah.
Brazil have been in the firing line. I don't know if that was in Neptune. I think it might have been. It probably was actually.
Brazil was mentioned to be dropped.
Malaysia.
Obviously, we know Malaysia's going. That's definitely going.
Yeah.
So there's lots of races under the cosh. But then again, Silverstone has been brought up again about possibly being, going again.
Yeah, I know. It's kind of like, John. You know what it's like. Silverstone. It's Wenger. It's Arsene Wenger. In, out, Silverstone in, out, in, out.
Go, no, we want it in.
But like Arsene Wenger though, he's staying. So yeah, probably Silverstone will be staying as well.
He is. So are you Silverstone in or are you Silverstone out?
We hope you're Silverstone in, because obviously I don't think anyone would not like Silverstone. I mean, you might like Donington Park in that.
Are you Portugal in or Portugal out?
That's quite a good one. That Portugal in or Portugal out? Portugal. Yes. Oh, that's crap. That. Anyway, yeah. So yeah, you're in that. But obviously, it is great. It's just great that they're looking at different circuits to go to Formula One. Obviously, Formula One, I mean, needs to go to these different places. Also, it's almost like a tour, really. It's not like going to a different. It's not like going to a stadium when 1,000 of those, obviously, up and down over the world. For different sports. But it's a stadium that can hold a sporting event. Formula One, it needs a proper track, and sometimes they're few and far between. So it's not like we can go to just any country we want and do like what sporting events call like a tour. For example, like. There's like there's like stadiums all around. It's a Formula One track. Sometimes they're not in countries and things like that defined, but it would be great that. And just to think, it's just another race that we can add to Europe. So the very famous, it's not very famous, but the thing that we all look forward to, John, is the European season. When people refer to it as the European, I mean, even people in like Australia call it the European season, and they're like, we're looking forward to the European season, because obviously I know it's strange because it's out of their time zone and that, but that's what we all look forward to. All the teams, all the teams are have a base in Europe. Okay, a lot of those teams are based in the UK. Haas, obviously, who are an American team, they have a European base in Barcelona in Spain. Yeah. Obviously, they have the base in America, but obviously they have a base in Spain. And then every other team has. Obviously, you got like Sauber, who are Swiss, obviously Toro Rosso, who are Italian. They're all in Europe, so it is quite amazing in that sense. And it's just another home race for them. There's no Portuguese Formula One drivers, but again, it comes back to what we've said a lot of times, John. When we're talking about these new circuits, it'll bring in more fans, because we'll have basically say Formula One goes to Portugal again. We had Estoril for like the older guys obviously, who were like kids during the 80s, so which will be like, oh wow, that's great. So they'll have been lifelong Formula One fans. But then all the new kids, especially the ones who live in Portugal, will watch this new track at Algarve and they'll think, oh wow, this is Formula One, and then become new fans. And also, well, it's just another circuit for people to go to. For example, like say if you live in Spain and you go to the Spanish Grand Prix, or I mean, maybe you don't. I mean, you might even be closer to like the Portuguese border, than like go to Barcelona or something like that. But it is amazing.
It's on the coast,
the
circuit, or near the coast, the place of Algarve, I think it's called. But just what you were saying before there about the fans as well, because F1 at the moment is on a rebuilding phase with the fans, because the FIA has annoyed a lot of F1 fans in recent years because of the so-called, obviously this qualifying elimination that we had, the double points, the V6s, that, and then obviously less European races, more foreign races. It's kind of like taking the heart and soul out of Formula One. Now, for Liberty Media are going about this in the right direction as well, and possibly bringing some new fans into Formula One as well. And also as well, if you are a guy who's like, oh, I love Formula One, it's brilliant, but we can't afford to go to Spain, or we can't afford to go to France or England, it's like, if we can have a Grand Prix here, it would be quite cool. And so again, that's like helping other big F1 fans from Portugal as well. And those who's, like you said, who probably went 2 or 3 times, whenever the Portuguese Grand Prix came about in the 80s and 90s, went there and obviously when they said, oh, it's not on the 1997 calendar, it's like, oh, there's our holiday ruined then for this year, or for however many years.
Yeah.
So it'll be good to relive, those glory days of like, okay, let's get the lads in, let's go for a cold one with the boys.
The cold one with the lads. Oh God. But
and go to the Portuguese Grand Prix. So yeah, I'm up for that.
Yeah, it would be fantastic. We're going to go on a holiday to Portugal to watch the race, but it just any of these new circuits is fantastic. I mean, it's almost like the reception that the Paul Ricard circuit when that was coming back, Jordan. You know, for next year, that like the atmosphere that got was crazy. Was really really great, and obviously, it is great. You know, I think we would definitely be up for that. If John's up for that, I'm up for that. New race in Formula One, made it a long calendar, made it a long season. I mean, the Formula One season is long at the moment, but I don't think there's ever a time, John, when we're all saying like, "Wow, this is way too long." You know what I mean? And obviously, you know, I mean, like the Premier League, you know, the football season. The Premier League is the longest football season in the world. It has been for a long, long time, and that's one of the things that like makes it exciting. Formula One, you know, say if we like shorten the summer break and shorten the winter break, you know, by quite a lot, because obviously. I think probably the latter half, making maybe like the races towards like chopping into December than like chopping before March. I think that's maybe, I don't know, that doesn't feel like a Formula One time. I think maybe push it towards maybe more like towards Christmas and that, but we'll make it like a longer Formula One season, longer races. That would be really really great. Another race in Europe would be amazing. As I just said, that all Formula One teams are based in Europe. Really great backing from them. An all-star circuit. I think a lot of signs point to yes. Liberty Media, you know, they're doing quite well. Obviously, they brought back Germany, they brought back Spain. So let's see if they can bring in Portugal. Anyway, guys, that's where we're going to wrap up the F1 debate show. Thank you very much for watching. If you're new around here, please make sure to subscribe. It's completely free, just next to our logo down in the bottom of your screens. Make sure to like and comment about anything that you want to mention that we've talked about in this video. Talk about the drivers that we talked about in the first half: Hulkenberg, Julian Palmer, Robert Kubica, Sergey Sirotkin, and what do you think is going to happen? What do you think the future is for Renault? Likewise, talk about the second part. Talk about the track to Estoril or Algarve. What do you like? Do you think do you think it's a good idea that they're going to bring in Algarve, a second Portuguese circuit, or do you not really like the idea? Do you think you'd like to see Formula One go to more of a glitzier part of the world? So anyway, thank you very much for watching. We've been the F1 Debate Show, and until next time, see you later, guys.
See you later, guys. Take care. Yes, boys. I'll have that.